Okay, welcome to welcome to the second of our tutorials on the flowcharts and organizational charts. This one is going to look at the graphics designer flowchart. You'll see, just like the writer flowchart that we did before, the graphics designer name is put up at the top, and we have the graphics designer's job broken into basically two categories. The first category is the game graphics, which we're going to have to look at first and kind of get done and out of the way before we can do the second category, because the second category is about presentation and how you are presenting your final product. So this presentation graphics section, just like the press release session from the writer flowchart, press release and presentation graphics will come in the fourth quarter, towards the end of the year. So these are kind of some of the last things that you're doing. So we're going to look at game graphics next. Once your team has come up with your game concept, the next thing that the graphics designer is going to want to look at is what are the graphics necessary for actually building your game. There's a couple of different areas where you're going to either create your own graphics, or you're going to have to go online and find the graphics similar to, let's say, the sprite sheet that we had for Mario, where we had several different motions for our character. They happen to be all made out for us nice and easy, and we can just cut and paste those into Scratch. Your game, depending on what type of game it is, may or may not have a sprite sheet available. You may have to actually create all your graphics from, pardoning the pun, from scratch. So there's two major areas where you're going to have a need for graphics in your game. The first area is your characters, and even if you're doing a more of an app sort of a game, like a trivia game or a quiz game, you're still going to want to have some sort of characters, something for your user or your gamer to interact with your game or your program. So there's going to be some sort of characters, whether that is just floating single images on the sides, whether it's menu screens. There's a lot of different variety in what is meant by characters, but these are going to be your primary elements, the things in your game that are going to move around and be manipulated. And the second area where you're going to have graphics need is in your backgrounds. So these are basically the solid images that you don't interact with, that add color or depth to your game, and sometimes provide information for your gamer. So the first area we'll look at is characters. And characters, you will have your primary characters. These are the things that your user will actually manipulate and move. And then you have secondary characters, and your game, again, may or may not have secondary characters. This is more of an optional area. Quite a few games do not have secondary characters. You move your primary characters around and there are no secondary characters. Secondary characters are any sprites or characters that move in your game that your gamer or your user cannot control or move. These could be bad guys, like, for instance, the Goombas in Mario, or obstacles that your character could run into. Uh, there's a variety of different things that secondary characters could be. As long as your gamer cannot move or manipulate or control these sprites, they're considered secondary characters. They may not be characters at all. They may be secondary objects. But for the sake of this flowchart, we're calling them secondary characters and primary characters. So once your gamer has decided what the characters are, if there are primary and secondary characters, what those primary and secondary characters are, the first actual document they're going to create, the first text document that they're going to create, I should say, is the list of all of these sprites. So once they've come up with who the primary and secondary characters are, they're going to come up with a complete list of all of your characters that are going to be considered sprites. This list should be typed out, and it should be on Excel. I'll go over a little bit more of what needs to be on this list in another tutorial. And then the sprite list will be used as what's called your programming points, the areas in your game that you're going to actually have to do some sort of script or program for. So your sprite list is one area of programming points, and your background screens is another area. So let's look at backgrounds. Like I said before, backgrounds are slightly different than characters in that they are stable and they generally don't move unless, for instance, you have a scrolling background or something like that. But they're a solid picture. They don't change. There's not necessarily costume flips and motions that you have to worry about with your backgrounds. So you have three different types of backgrounds, and you may or may not have all of these types of backgrounds, but you should have at least one of the three. The first is opening and closing menus. This could be a text, this could be a press this button to start the game. They can be very simple or very complex. The next is level backgrounds. That's like the scrolling level backgrounds that we created from Mario, or anything that you can think of as a background image that your character kind of stands on top of and moves around. So you could have one or multiple level backgrounds. And then what's called title screens. This can happen in between levels. This could be a welcome to the game screen. It can be introduction, instructions on how to play your game. Any of those things are considered title screens. And the three of these combine to create what's called our background screens list. So your sprites list and your background screens list are both very important in coming up with how to actually program your game. So this should cover all of your game graphics. The last part, what I said was the fourth quarter work, is your presentation graphics and your press release. Now, presentation graphics, you will not have to come up with an official list of what graphics you put in your presentation, but you will have to kind of put these specific graphics into a separate folder, and there will be at least 2 to 5 files in this folder. So 2 to 5 pictures are going to be necessary for a basic level presentation. So your game graphics is going to have a press release. So some of these graphics, things that you create over here, are going to need to be saved and moved into press release at some point. And your press release, just like in the writer section, is broken down into two types of press releases. One is your public release, what information or pictures you're going to release to the public for your marketing and to get people to play your game. The second is commercial marketing. Commercial marketing can be, and usually is, a bit different than your public release. So the three things that you're going to need for both your commercial marketing and your public release are some sort of high-def images. You want to have really crisp, clear pictures. They may even be better graphic quality than what is in your game itself. So this is going to require a little bit of work, and we'll have another tutorial on how to do high-def images. Then you're going to have what's called screenshots. Easiest way to do screenshots on a PC is to hit the print screen button. I will show in class a few other ways to do screenshots, and you can come at Lunch Lab and work with me on screenshots as well if you need additional help on how to do screenshots. And the last part is character designs. Now you'll see that commercial marketing uses all three of these different types of graphics, whereas the public release is only going to use screenshots and high-def images. Looks like I'm running short on time here, so we're going to kind of wrap this up quick. Character designs is going to be specific to commercial marketing and does not necessarily have to be high-quality graphics. They can even be just sketches and discussions about it. These three things will be put into your investment presentation, which is your commercial marketing, and your marketing graphics, which is your public release and presentation. So I have about 10 seconds left. So hopefully this was helpful in kind of understanding how this flowchart was set up. And if you need additional instruction, please come see me either at Lunch Lab or during class. Thanks very much.